Welcome to another edition of Lifting Lowdown, the bi-weekly industry podcast brought to you by Lift Hoist International. My name is Guy Harris, and I'm the publisher of MHI, the magazine servicing the global industrial lifting sector. Regular listeners will know that this podcast does not take the format of a straightforward interview, but invites industry representatives to openly discuss leading topics in a relaxed and friendly manner. In this, our latest instalment, my co-host Richard Howes and I caught up with Daniel McKinnon, the Executive Vice President of Exhibitions at MHI, the global trade association representing the materials handling, supply chain and logistics industry, to discuss the forthcoming ProMat DX event, as well as how virtual exhibitions stack up against traditional face-to-face trade shows and conferences. Daniel brings over 29 years of experience in exhibition management to MHI. His most recent role was Vice President of Global Client Solutions at Freeman XP, where he focused on helping customers grow their events and business. Previously, as Vice President of Events for the Energy and Engineering Group at Axis Intelligence, Daniel was charged with launching and developing several industrial leading events. In addition, Daniel worked as Vice President of Government Events at 1105 Media. He also served as Executive Vice President of Messe Frankfurt Incorporated, with management and oversight responsibility for the company's international trade shows and business development efforts in North America. He has also served as Executive Director of International Development for America's Atlanta Incorporated and was International Sales and Marketing Director at Semco Productions. Daniel is a past chairperson of the International Association of Exhibitions and Events, having served on the board of directors from 2012 to 2019. Daniel is also a former chair and director of the Center for Exhibition Industry Research Board of Directors. He lives in Dallas, Texas with his wife, 5 children, 1 dog and a cat, and commutes to the MHI offices in Charlotte, North Carolina during the week. Well, Rich, welcome back to another episode of Lifting Lowdown. How are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Lockdown endures here, doesn't it, in the UK? But we've got a roadmap out of it, which is encouraging people. We're going to talk about trade shows and MHI's plans for a virtual ProMat, aren't we? I mean, that's exciting in itself, but I certainly wish we were on the cusp of a normal spring trade show season, but no such luck there.
No, indeed. And that leads us nicely to welcome Dan. Daniel, hello and welcome to Lifting Lowdown. It's a pleasure to have you on board, sir.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to be able to join you guys.
Well, brilliant. Thank you. And we do appreciate it. And hopefully in the next 30 minutes or 40 minutes or so, we will be able to offer some insights to MHI and the digital experience, but also talk about virtual trade shows versus physical trade shows in a bit more depth. So, Daniel, let's start with you, if you don't mind. Obviously, the MHI ProMat exhibition has a long and proud history of delivering physical events, and we were all looking forward to 2021, as Rich just mentioned. But your hand was forced, leading up to this next month. And due to the pandemic, can you just take us through the process a little bit, please? Because obviously this is a huge show, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the world of its type. And you must have been well along the process before you made the decision to roll out a digital experience over a physical one. Can you just take us through a bit of that timeline, please?
Absolutely. So we wrapped up MODEX on March 12th of 2020. And that was really when this pandemic was starting to grip the whole world and shut down the international supply chain and all of our economies. And we were caught off guard, as everybody was. We produced MODEX happily. We were not cavalier about the decision to hold MODEX. We consulted with all of the necessary public health organizations, the state of Georgia, city of Atlanta, our exhibitors and members. It was really never a thought to cancel it based on the information that we had. Now, hindsight is 2020, and probably if we had all the information that we have now, we may have canceled it, but it would have been catastrophic to our members if we had done so. So we held Modex, and we were, I would say it was a qualified success. We had a lot of really good feedback and a lot of appreciation that we were able to push ahead. And what we did is we applied some digital knowledge, some post-show opportunities for our members and our attendees to engage with each other. All of this was done with the idea that we would be producing ProMat 2021 in Chicago in April. And really, there was, I guess, as I noted earlier, we were uninformed. We did not know the scope of the impact that this pandemic would have, not only on the association, but on our trade show. So after 35 years of having ProMat or a trade show, every year, MHI made the very difficult decision to cancel ProMat 2021.
Yeah.
The result of that was a lot of questions and a lot of concerns from our entire community, our exhibitors, our members, our attendees. So we were very far, as you mentioned, we were very far down the road with our planning. We had almost 900 exhibitors on the show floor. Wow. And 475,000 square feet of space. So it was already larger than it was in 2019. So we had to take the steps to mitigate the impact on our community. We provided 4 options for the ProMat 2021 exhibitors. Those 4 options were to transfer or defer their costs to Modex 2022, which, by the way, if I have a chance to mention later, is going gangbusters. They could also apply this to ProMat DX, which is our digital version of ProMat, obviously not the same. And we, although we're very excited about it, it certainly doesn't provide an equal level or an equitable level of opportunities. They could also get a full refund. And this was very important. And this was a very hard decision because this puts us in a very difficult spot. We are a member-driven organization. We have many other benefits outside of the trade show and market access. This put us in a bit of a pinch, but we did offer it. And then the final choice was to mix up, they could apply some to membership, they could apply some to Modex 22. They could choose what they want to do with their money. We were not going to keep it as some other organizations did. We were determined to provide the member benefit and the member resources that MHI has always been known for, and not be a self-serving or a confrontational type of situation. So that's basically how it went down. I don't know if you want to discuss any follow-up questions with that.
Well, I mean, I know for a fact that Rich was at Modex last year, and as he said before on Lifting Lowdown, that marked the end of the trade season. It should have really marked the beginning of the 2020 trade season for all of us. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to come in now, Rich, because I think you said you were on the show floor and you heard rumblings about virtual events and what was going to happen to physical events further down the line due to COVID, of course.
Yeah, it is an interesting point in the timeline, isn't it? And Dan says there that kind of MHI wasn't cavalier in its planning at the time of Modex, and I completely get that because I crossed the Atlantic myself, almost a year ago to the day in pretty good faith that we were doing the right thing, and absolutely between Modex and ConExpo over in Vegas that week, it pretty much kind of, as we said before on this podcast, but for the benefit of new listeners, it was kind of the pandemic was something going on elsewhere, and then it became something that was going to impact our lives for the long term. Exactly that, and in the space of that very week where those shows were happening. So, and I think as time's gone on, and as Dan alludes to the planning there, I think we're all a lot more cautious and a lot more kind of realistic about this. But I just want to press Dan a little bit on on the boardroom, if we can kind of put our listeners in the MHI boardroom when these decisions were going to be made. So those 4 options you outlined, to what extent was there? Who was involved in this decision making? Was there 3 or 4 of you? Was there more than that? Was it something that there wasn't in fact any decisions made? It was rolled out entirely to membership, and within that decision making group, to what extent were people? Was there a difference of opinion, or was there consensus that a physical show was going to be impossible, even from a long way out? Can you just go back to that point in time and tell us a little bit about where people's mindsets were at within the organization?
Absolutely. So it started off with some canvassing of our members and some questions, some surveys. My colleagues and I spent a lot of time answering questions about, when are you going to make the decision to cancel? What are you going to do if you have to cancel? What are you going to do if the city of Chicago is not open, which in fact it is not still open?
Yeah,
that's a valid point. Worth pointing out.
Yeah. And so we have, when you produce a large trade show, there are many different planning topics that have to be defined and executed very far out, 18 months to 2 years out. And those include commitments to hotels, commitments to the facility, commitments to your exhibitors and your contractor decorators that have to come in and provide the services that make large shows work effectively. So we were in a position where we had to look at all of our contracts, have discussions with all of our partners, and most importantly, have discussions with our members on the impact of a cancellation or a postponement or a transition to a digital event. So we had originally planned, and by the way, when we have these discussions, it starts off with my colleagues and I, the exhibitions team and my marketing colleagues, to determine whether or not, if we did go ahead with the show, if it was the same scale or the same opportunities that we would usually provide with a ProMat or a Modex. And we began to determine that we would not be able to provide those kinds of opportunities. We did not want to impact the brand, the ProMat brand, or MHI's credibility. So
sure,
we were in discussions with our partners, we were in discussions with our members. And as we approached October, the end of October, the beginning of November, it was clear that there was not going to be some miracle where everything opened back up and people felt safe to travel and to engage in face-to-face interactions with their customers and their friends and their colleagues and their peers. So, after discussions with the industry, with our partners, we started to try to define how we would communicate the cancellation of ProMat. And that's what it was. We came to a determination that there's no postponement. There's no, we're going to have digital ProMat. We're going to do this. We're canceling ProMat, and we will develop a plan of how to provide market access to our members outside of a live physical trade show. So, the surveys started coming back, and our exhibitors like, no way, we can't do this. I will say that there were dozens of the larger exhibitors like, you have to do it, you have to push forward, you have to do it. And so we were communicating, well, we cannot do it if the city of Chicago and the facility, McCormick Place, are not open.
Sure.
And the hotels are not open, and the airlines are not flying, and there's travel restrictions in different states and different countries. 20% of our audience comes from outside of the United States. So,
well, that's a valid point, and one I wanted to touch upon briefly, Daniel, because it's all very well and good having an internal show, an internal US event, but I mean, a lot of people exhibit at ProMat or visit ProMat that come outside of the United States of America. So there were always going to be some form of travel restrictions around this time of the year, even if Chicago was open, of course.
That is accurate. that was a huge factor in the decision. So we had these discussions. We met with the board. John Paxton, our CEO, met with the board of directors. We had a meeting where I presented some of the feedback we had gotten from the surveys, where we had some data and also some answers from our partners, most notably Chicago. There was no way we could produce ProMat. So in November, leading into December, we had set a date of January 15th to cancel the show. Well, that was not well thought out. I would be candid, and this was me. I'm accountable, and I'm certainly the one. It was a mea culpa. I said, okay, let's on January 15th we'll announce it. And so it was like, no way, and not just our partners, not GES who does our contracting. Yeah, they're like, that's too late. That everybody's booth is going to be in transit. We will have applied hundreds, thousands of hours of labor to make sure that we could accommodate this when it's not going to happen. So you need to push that up. So based on the feedback from our members and a discussion with the board of directors, that decision was pushed up to December 7th. And we knew at that point we were going to cancel it. We just had to communicate effectively with everybody involved, our members most importantly, and then the facility and all of the attendees and all of the media. So it was December 7th. That's when we announced it. Not only did we announce that, at the same time we announced a new opportunity, which was ProMat DX. Now, it's very important to be clear here. We tried to be clear in our communications. ProMat was canceled. There is no ProMat. ProMat is a live, dynamic, exciting, interactive, face-to-face event. ProMat DX is purely digital.
Got you. And that's a very pertinent point to raise, Daniel. So thank you very much. And hopefully everyone's caught that. And I'm going to ask you to park that there for us for a few minutes, because I want to come back to ProMat DX and how that may feature in future years. I mean, I'm guessing I'm right in saying that the MHI's standpoint or viewpoint is that they would much prefer a physical event over a digital one. Would that be fair to say?
It would be more than fair to say. It would be extremely accurate and concise. We surveyed, we have data that demonstrates that, and overwhelmingly people prefer, and this is exhibitors and attendees.
Yes.
Overwhelmingly, people prefer a live trade show.
I think we all do, and we'll go on to talk about that a little bit more. I think some of the pros and cons of virtual versus physical, vice versa. But I mean, you had a lot to do. I mean, you must have done a fair amount leading up to that 7th of December cutoff date. It was brought forward a month even. The ball must have been rolling, so to speak. Plans were in action. They were rolling forward. Can you give us some insight, as without mentioning names, I'm sure you made some comparisons with other event organizers that had gone digital out of necessity. Can you tell us the lessons that you've learned from some of the failures from other organizers? As I say, without mentioning names, we're not here. Everyone was in a very difficult position.
Yeah.
Rallying, I mean, it must have been a nightmare for event organizers to suddenly realize around about the end of March that their shows were unlikely to go ahead. And what show organizers have delivered, virtual or otherwise, has been fantastic. Hats off to them. But I mean, what lessons have you learned from some of the mistakes that were made before DX was announced?
Yeah, so really two topics on this point. First of all, I would never disparage the good name of my industry peers. I'm very involved in the exhibitions industry outside of MHI, as part of other associations that represent and advocate for the exhibitions industry. I know the position that everybody was in. I worked for a German messe for 15 years before MHI and appreciate the challenges faced. I will say there are unique challenges faced by trade shows, trade fairs outside of the United States. In the United States, the trade shows, they are not as pretty, they are not as fun, but they are much more focused on content and education as much as they are on product. If you go to a German messe or you go to a Chinese trade show, it is product, product, product. And they'll have some sessions here and there, but really it is so focused on the exhibitors and the product. And that's good. That's a successful formula. We are a trade association, and many of the trade shows that are produced in the United States, unlike outside of the United States, are produced by trade associations. Education and knowledge is very important to us. And therefore, we're able to adapt an online version. I would say a little bit easier. It's easier to provide content online than it is to demonstrate the product. So we were in, if not nobody was in a favorable position, but we were in, I feel like, a better position than my industry peers outside of North America. So that's one topic. The second topic is, this pandemic punched everyone in the stomach. So we had been watching other organizations that did adapt a more digital strategy. We learned some lessons very early from watching other organizations. One, you better invest in the technology and the new partnerships, or else fail. Complete fail. If your technology isn't seamless, if your video and your audio isn't perfect, you failed. You did not deliver. So we watched that. We really vetted dozens of potential partners. The partner that we did choose, it was a significant investment of our resources, and we did it because we knew they were the best. They were the best in class, and we wanted to produce the best in class digital event. So we went with them. And then we added a couple of unique features to this. One, it's an English company, actually. They're called Grip, and they are an AI-driven matchmaking platform that's integrated into our ProMat DX site. So there's a lot of great features and benefits. We did a lot of research. We did a ton of due diligence. We chose the best partners, and we observed other organizations and what they did right and what they did not do right.
Okay, fantastic. Rich?
I think just to go back a step and then pick up where we've ended up there. I think the word, I've been full of admiration, by the way, Daniel, by the way, for the way that your team has announced this and put ProMat DX to market. And the reason the PR guy in me respects it, and I think, is the courage that you had to use the word cancelled. And I think I recognise that word was important because it's a nod to the fact that you're going to pick up in 2022 and 23 with that physical event. But I think what's been interesting about where other organisations have gone slightly wrong is that I think they've tried to convince their audiences that they can actually replace this activity online. And I think what I like about what you guys have done is that we're still going to give the audience a value-added, educational, engaging experience, but we're not pretending to do what we would have done before. So congratulations on that.
Can I just quickly butt in, Rich, very quickly? Because I think also some organisations, unfortunately, have been quite opportunistic or seen this as an opportunity, and they've jumped in to try and supply an opportunity to visitors, attendees, and exhibitors too, but they haven't made the investments that MHI have. So ultimately, what people who've invested money into those virtual events, their money hasn't necessarily been particularly well invested because the thing hasn't been delivered properly. And I don't know if you'd agree with that, but that's my take on it. I've seen a few of these, new events crop up, and sadly seen very little return, having spoken to some of my clients.
Yeah, there's definitely been an opportunism out there. I can, and definitely the quality just hasn't been there. I mean, I've participated in a couple of, depending on what these companies are choosing to badge them as, is you've got to kind of cut them a little bit of slack, I guess. If it's is it a virtual trade show? Is it a webinar? Is it a seminar and that kind of thing? So I think we've got to acknowledge that. But in terms of that opportunism, then Dan, to what extent are you going to look at this in isolation as cover for an in-person ProMat? And just kind of park it and it's done and it's never going to come back again? Or to what extent might we see some virtual activity bridge the gap between ProMats and Modexes of the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one thing I want to say about, in the process of asking that question or bringing up this topic, you had mentioned virtual trade shows. So we refuse to call this a virtual trade show. It is not a virtual trade show. It is not a trade show. It is a digital event, and it has nothing to do with a trade show, which can only be face-to-face.
Yeah, okay.
So
thanks for the distinction, Daniel.
Oh yeah, well no, so we're that, so we always have this big chip on our. We're so sad and depressed that we're not going to be in Chicago for 2 weeks with the world's global supply chain industry, and so we're doing what we have to do to provide market access to our members, and that is this digital event. That is ProMat DX. Now that being said, I would never want to mitigate the value of ProMat DX. Just some quick numbers: we have 360 sponsors, 655 product demos, 106 educational sessions, 18 roundtables, 4 keynotes, 5 daily recaps, innovation awards, and a benefit for the Feeding of America, which is there's some economic challenges here in the United States, as there has been in the UK.
Yeah,
so
indeed.
And we're committed to making sure that our members are bringing their products and their technologies to market this year, and that we will bring our whole community, our whole global community to bear for this digital opportunity. It's 5 days. So it is an extraordinary event. So to answer the question though about how will we take these lessons and best practices and apply them to our trade shows, we've learned so much in this past year, and we know that we will be able to benefit and support the face-to-face trade shows by adding these digital components. So what we're going to do, we're going to hold the content, and we're going to hold all of the exhibitor showcases throughout the year. So ProMat DX won't really wrap up until September, which is when we go live with Modex promotion and Modex exhibitors. And then after Modex, we will hold on our site for another 6 to 9 months all of the information that was populated within the exhibitor showcases and all the content that we have to offer. That will be live and available. One interesting feature, and one of the best things that we've learned, Grit, the matchmaking tool I mentioned earlier, the AI-driven matchmaking, we will continue to use that for our live events because it has a meeting where you set up meetings, and that's excellent. It pre-qualifies, so that will help the efficiency of our exhibitors. Another thing is the transfer of data, legal transfer of data, will be available for our ProMat DX sponsors, and then in the future we'll have this capability for our exhibitors. So we're providing a better lead acquisition opportunity for our exhibitors and our sponsors at DX, and we're helping them create a better experience at the live trade show. So we're learning lessons, and I think that's an important point. This is not just a one-off. We're doing this to provide market access to our members, and then we're learning how to continue to help them and support them in the future at our trade shows.
Okay, that's fantastic. I mean, obviously you've made a huge investment, as you've alluded to. So the intention is to somehow continue what's been learnt and laid out through ProMat DX. You'll kind of dovetail that into the ProMat experience going forward. Have I got that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Rich.
No, not at all. So, I just a little bit of background. My first ProMat was '07, and I followed the shows, even including the defunct NA shows for a couple of years. I think Modex was inaugurated in 2012, and so I've seen the shows grow, and I know that you guys have always been quite keen to point out that growth in terms of percentage gains and more square footage and additional markets and that kind of thing. And it's, you know, it's been exciting to monitor that. So to what extent might the ProMat DX experience and all this technology, this data and this virtual world that we're building around it, to what extent is that going to cap the growth of floor space, or indeed accelerate it? Or how might Modex look and feel different, and how might it not be, or indeed will it be, that focus on the floor space, the aisles, and those on that on-site education and engagement?
So I don't see any slowing of the growth that we have recognized, and that's not based on, you know, our great ability to produce trade shows. That's based on this industry's continual innovation and moving the needle forward in technology, and you know, we are the beneficiaries of the industry that MHI represents. So that being noted, I will say that we will continue to invest our intellectual capabilities and our experience and our knowledge into producing large, dynamic, experiential face-to-face trade shows. We will use this digital lesson to support those trade shows. And in order to take advantage of our digital opportunities, you will have to be an exhibitor. These will be value add opportunities for exhibitors. These new data opportunities, these new matchmaking opportunities will only be available to those exhibitors that are on the show floor. Okay. So, you know, we plan to use the lessons learned to continue to grow and support the trade shows. And if you look at Modex 2022, which is, you know, next year, we're already at 94% sold out. As a matter of fact, after ProMat DX, we're going to have to move things around to add about 25,000 additional square feet, because we haven't even added any of our international pavilions yet. So we've got a lot of growth in the next 6 months on Modex, and it will be, you know, at least 50% larger than it was in 20, and the largest one yet. So we're excited about the future of the face.
I'd imagine everyone's chomping at the bit, aren't they?
They are. They are.
Quite frankly,
absolutely.
I know I am. So like, we talked a lot about ProMat DX. We talked a lot about ProMat and Modex. Coming from the pedigree that you do, Daniel, what's your opinion? What are the pros of, I mean, you know, maybe ProMat DX aside, what are the benefits of virtual events over physical events for both attendees as well as exhibitors, do you feel?
So I do believe there's more benefits to the face-to-face. However, there are some benefits to a digital. We're able to reach out to the furthest reaches of the world and connect our members with, you know, export opportunities that they otherwise would not have. We are able to qualify people much better. You know, we've always been a very big tent. If you want to come to Modex and ProMat and you're in the industry, you are welcome. However, we're being much more intentional in our attendees and how they are, you know, engaging with our sponsors for a virtual event. You can control more. You can control your access. You can gate things. You can, you know, based on the code of conduct that we have defined, if somebody violates that code of conduct, then their credentials are removed and they don't have access. So,
Interesting.
some nefarious people in any event that you produce, and we would, prefer to keep, the slate as qualified and productive as possible. And we're able to do that with a digital event much better than in a live event, which is, really, again, it's big tent, it's a festival, and we like that idea. We want festivals, we want human beings to interact in a fun and compelling way. That being said, this is a market access tool for our members and our sponsors to get in front of as many qualified prospective customers and existing customers as possible. The engagement is much different,
Yeah, sure.
You and I are engaging right now. However, it would be much better if we were engaging in person and having a conversation, not via technology, but via our own senses.
I mean, big data. Go on, sorry, Rich.
No, I was just going to pick up on that because, and I know I've said this before to some extent, but I think that to use this call and recording as a case in point, the virtual and the digital stuff kind of works, but you need the email invitation, you need the calendar note, you've got the window, and it just doesn't allow for the chance encounters that you get in the real in-person experience. I know the show's got defined dates and you do put appointments in the diary, but all the real productivity for me and the exciting thing about shows is the kind of is that kind of network that creates over the week, and the chance meetings and the introductions. And I know that this technology and grip, as you reference, will have when they're doing their sales pitches, there'll be probably more kind of leaning towards the virtual and championing it more than what I think us three here are. But I definitely think it's irreplaceable, and it's exciting just to hear of the way MHI and Daniel and his team are planning for normality, because I just think we need it back, and I reject completely the argument that people are going to be less inclined to participate in this kind of activity moving forward. I think if you don't want to go back to it, I think you need to look more at why you were there in the first place than the real reasons why you don't want to go back to it. So I'm really encouraged by it. So I didn't mean to cut in, but I just wanted to just to emphasize that point.
I mean, so Rich, that just real quickly, that's a really important point. And one thing, as somebody that's a lifelong exhibitions nerd, one thing that virtual will never provide is the serendipity that exists when you're at a trade show.
Yeah.
Bump into Bob that you haven't seen in 6 years, and he's looking for something that you're able to, a solution that you're able to provide. That doesn't happen virtually. You bump into Steve or Melissa at the bar. You bump into whomever at the restaurant. You bump into somebody in the aisle. You bump into whomever at the hotel. This serendipity, the human being requirement to use our 5 senses will never be met by virtual events. You may sign contracts and you may create new opportunities via a digital event, but nothing will ever beat a handshake and a look in the eye.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And what I wanted to say is there's a long list of pros for virtual events, but I also see them as potentially cons too. I mean, clear pros are the ability to capture big data through a virtual event.
Yes.
The other one is, is clearly less expensive, and you save more resources, natural or otherwise, by attending a virtual event. And then you start looking at some of these lists, and it's just things like virtual events bring more attendees. Now, we're not talking about ProMat DX, we're not talking about any specific show, but from my experience, they don't. They talk about increased opportunities for engagement. I don't necessarily see that with virtual shows either. I mean, then the list goes on. And what you're saying, Rich, is absolutely true. We've said it so many times before, personally and on this podcast. the opportunities for camaraderie, bonhomie, meeting in the bar afterwards, those chance encounters in a trade aisle. I mean, you just don't get those with a virtual event, do you? No matter how hard you try to replicate it.
Absolutely, and I think I don't think it should be underplayed, the kind of the importance of people in Daniel's position and MHI to kind of champion that, because there would have been a temptation, I think, to kind of do exactly what Dan says they're not doing, and say that this is ProMat, it's just a little bit different this year. And I think that would have been quite a damaging thing for this type of engagement. So I think it's fantastic the way this has been marketed. I love the word cancelled. I think it's one of the most
refreshing,
positive,
honest.
I just think it's exactly that. It's a fantastic choice of word. I'm not going to press Daniel on to what extent there was or wasn't any pushback on using it, but I think that's absolutely the right word to use, and I think the more people in higher profile marketing positions should really be taking a similar stance. So hats off to MHI. Absolutely, I think fair play. It's courageous, but I get exactly what their end goal is and why they're doing it. So yeah, fair play.
And I'm also encouraged as well, Daniel, that the MHI are equally as keen to see a return to the physical ProMat that we all love and love to attend. I mean, look, just for the record, I'm not knocking virtual events. I guess what I'm saying is I think they work for certain industries, or they're more likely to work for certain industries. Gaming, for example, maybe the financial markets, and of course they come with myriad of opportunities and myriad of benefits over physical events. But I don't think the materials handling, the lifting and the lift and shift industry that we're all in and synonymous with really can a virtual event can't do it justice. We all need to see the equipment. We need to see it demonstrated. You need to see those kind of non-verbal cues when speaking to people, all of which you can't get through a virtual experience.
No.
I was thinking.
Yeah. Heavy equipment industrial shows require, live product demonstrations and live interaction. I think that my European and Asian trade show producers would concur with that. One more problem with the virtual thing is that people are really getting virtual fatigue. How long do you want to stare at your computer for a day?
Exactly. And there's so many distractions after all, aren't there? Whether it's your emails, Netflix, richer than the football scores.
I was thinking about this the other day, and I think that almost without exception, maybe in hindsight we could have put someone on this podcast with us three who was kind of maybe pushed back a little bit on us, and because we're kind of all singing from the same hymn sheet, which listeners might not thank us for. But when I was thinking about all the different events that I go to, big and small business and end user markets, and pretty much the ones when I was thinking would lend themselves best to a virtual alternative are pretty much the worst ones in person. And I think all I was really saying is I just don't want to participate in them. And if I just had a link that I could dip in and out of, then that would be good. But really all I was actually acknowledging was that I just didn't want to invest time and money in participating in that event. And it was almost without except the only ones where I think there was a slight exception to that was the ones where there was a lot of value in a particular end user market space that I perhaps didn't necessarily want to devote to overseas flights and free nights in a hotel for one niche or one niche, as Daniel's country folk would say. But really, almost without exception, the ones that lent themselves to going virtual were just simply the worst shows that are in my diary.
Yeah, and do you go in and out of them is the question. Like you're like, oh, I'll poke around this. I'll see what kind of, what kind of opportunities they have. But then you get distracted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
when United's playing City and beating the pants off of them, you get distracted by that.
Exactly. Well, look, unfortunately, we are running out of time, but not wanting to stop the conversation dead here. Are there any points you want to raise, Daniel, before we all say goodbye to each other?
Well, just a couple. One, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about these things. I think it's clear that MHI is committed to our trade shows, both MODEX and ProMat. However, we're super excited about ProMat DX. We put together an amazing platform where our sponsors will get tremendous value and benefit. The educational opportunities are extensive. So we're really excited about it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Bridger House are exhibiting, Lift Hoist International are exhibiting, or is exhibiting. Yeah, and thank you for taking the time to distinguish, the differences between DX and ProMat, and I wish you every luck and success with it, Daniel. And that goes to everyone at MHI, of course. Rich, any last points, mate?
No, just look, Dan. Just a quick answer from you, if you can. I'm just thinking of the timeline and how long you've been in the role, etc. I remember, I think we first met logging, Matt. It doesn't really matter when it was, but when you took this job, obviously you were taking over two of the most lucrative trade shows on the planet. We didn't know COVID was around the corner. So how do you answer the question when your friends say to you, how's your new job going? How's it? Are you enjoying this challenge, or is it just is it mind bending? Both.
So these are ProMat MODEX are big, beautiful trade shows, and I am, as I mentioned, an exhibitions nerd. I was super excited about this opportunity. I've been doing trade shows my whole life. I've done some amazing events and exhibitions, and I've provided my knowledge and my experience to a couple of different organizations. MHI is a very positive place for me personally and professionally. I've got a big family. MHI is very family oriented. None of that changed. None of that has gone away. The absolute constructive messaging, the care and devotion that this organization, that the board of directors and that this whole organization shows to each other and to the industry, that didn't go anywhere. I think the one thing about this that may have benefited me was MODEX 20 tested all of my knowledge and experience. How are we going to get through this? How are we going to do this? It was hard. We did it, and I'm happy about the results. When ProMat was canceled, I won't say there weren't dark places, but I've learned so much. And MODEX, the momentum for MODEX and getting back together and seeing you guys in Atlanta next year, is such an exciting event. And the lessons that we're going to learn from ProMat DX and the value that we're going to provide to our members is, it's recognized. And so, in the end of the day, although it's been a challenging few months, the future is extraordinarily bright, and I'm a very positive person. So I'm looking forward to what we can do with MHI and with this whole global supply chain community in the future.
Well, brilliant. Let's all agree to meet up for a coffee in the CNN building on day one of MODEX.
Coffee.
Day one at the beginning of MODEX.
Irish coffee.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find something a little stronger in the evening when we reconvene. Look, gents, I'm afraid we do have to leave it there. Huge thanks to you both for coming on. Really appreciate it. Thanks for all your insights, Daniel. And once again, the best of luck for ProMat DX. We're all looking forward to it, and especially now you've taken the time to explain a lot more of the the intricacies of what it is that you've established and you've put together here. So thanks again, guys. Go well, stay safe, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care, y'all.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good luck.
Knowing more than I did before having spoken to Daniel, I'm looking forward to ProMat DX. No surprise that I'm a big advocate of the traditional format for trade shows, as I believe they offer so much more value and brand recognition than the virtual alternative. However, and as covered previously on Lifting Lowdown, video conferencing and so many other technologies have presented many positives and long-term benefits to our industry during the pandemic. Sadly, I feel virtual trade fairs are not one of them. That is not to say they do not suit other industries such as gaming perfectly. However, for industries such as clothing, manufacturing and services, research shows that customers need and want the full sensory experience. Will the virtual trade show ever completely replace the in-person event? I think not. At least, not for a long time anyway. And it's encouraging to hear that organisations like MHI are in agreement. That said, I do see a future where exhibitors and conference organisers will integrate more virtual aspects into their events and stands, taking the best that the technology has to offer while retaining all the benefits of face-to-face interaction. As ever, feel free to leave comments or present any questions for me and our guests. Your feedback and suggestions for future editions will enable us to make this podcast even more relevant and interesting. You can keep up to date with the latest industry news by visiting LHI's website liftandhoist.com. Thanks for listening and look out for the next episode in a couple of weeks. Until then, stay safe.